Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. We're here every week, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today we welcome in a guy I was kind of surprised, the sixth visit to this show.
Yes, the Honorable David Holt,
Yes.
the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City.
Under a variety of roles.
Yes. He
As
has
a-
been on as a legislator, as a mayoral candidate, and then as a elected mayor.
Yeah. It's been a couple of years and a lot's been going on. Have you noticed?
Yeah, he stirred things up. So we'll have to figure out what's rumbling in his area.
Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt, today's guest in The Verdict. We'll be right back.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Military service ran in my blood, starting from my father, which joined the Navy, on the Chickasaw side, my uncle, which served in the United States Army. I'm Benjamin Espinosa, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, and I'm Chickasaw. I went to the Secretary of Defense's staff at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., which ultimately led to becoming a combat support technician for Naval Special Warfare, specifically SEAL Team 10. I think to be proud and to love your tribe, to love being Chickasaw, you also have to love being American. You also have to love everything that America stands for. Equality, perseverance, professionalism, and power. I want my family to know that their father is a good person, but also feels that he has an obligation to the country and to love this nation. Anything worth having is worth dying for. The military and the country owes me nothing. I owe it everything.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Well, as we told you in the open, our guest today is the Honorable David Holt, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City. This is the mayor's sixth appearance, not all as mayor, however, in some of his prior endeavors. He was kind enough to tell us what's going on in his world. But he is, I've introduced him a number of times, and so I've kind of been a little selective on what I'm going to point out this time. He is Oklahoma City's first Native American mayor in 2018. He was first elected and just re-elected recently in the last election. He did his undergraduate work at George Washington University, and is in his one of the first tasks he took on as mayor was shepherding the MAPS 4 process vote that now we're seeing come to fruition, one that's going to advance the city in many ways. Mayor, glad to see you. Yeah. Glad to have you.
Thank you. My honor. Thanks for having me back. This is our first time together in years. I don't know how many, but it's been a minute since I've been on set here at The Verdict, so it's great to be back.
Yeah, because you were on Zoom the last
Did a Zoom
time.
show during the pandemic, and I assume I had at least one in-person show as mayor before that, but it's been
I think you did too. Well, let's just talk about a changing world. And, we always talk about change as accelerating. And, when you talk about trying to lead a city, there's certain things, that have been in place for a long, long time. And so change is slow, change is hard, and yet you've had to lead through change that's at an ever-increasing pace. Are those things that you even think about, or did you come to office thinking, boy, we need to change this and we need to change that, and let's get to it?
Yeah, a little awkward for my predecessor to ask me.
I was interested in what your response was
to ask me, did you feel like you had to change a lot of things, man?
in this post-Cornett era?
So, well, here's what I would say, and it's the way I felt even before taking office. What I did know was that our city was undergoing a lot of transition and change naturally without the intervention of City Hall. You had dramatic demographic change that's happening. So, and you can look back, I mean, you became mayor almost 20 years ago now, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
18 years ago as we sit here. And so a lot of that has happened since you took office. So you've seen, obviously, a dramatic growth in the Latino population of Oklahoma City. You've seen, obviously, kind of just even before the summer of 2020, just a national embrace of diversity and inclusion. And so, not only was were the demographics of the city shifting, but there was, a pent-up demand to be appreciated, to be seen, to be included in conversations that maybe traditionally minority communities in Oklahoma City had not been. So I knew that was kind of brewing. And also sort of a political transition. Now, City Hall is officially nonpartisan, and I defend that vigorously. But at the same time, people think what they think. I mean, there's still a philosophical, trend that's going to be reflected at City Hall. And certainly the city was just changing like most big cities. It was, a big city in America, as Mayor Cornett well knows, tend to be blue, right? Politically. I mean, I'm actually the third largest city in the entire United States to have a Republican mayor. And which means we're 22nd, which means the other 19 in the 22 largest cities are Democratic mayors. So Oklahoma City was kind of going, as it grew in population, it was going through that same transition. And then there's also the last thing that was changing was just its size. I mean, just all those new people demographically, all those new people politically, also just meant new people. And just having that many new people in a community just changes things. People don't remember certain events that we all take for granted. They don't know certain people we all think everybody knows. And they're bringing their own ideas and their own experiences from not just around the country, but around the world. We were becoming more diverse and international at the same time. So I knew change was coming. One last comment. I also recognized you'd had a 14-year mayor, an 18-year city manager, an 18-year police chief, 15-year chamber president. I mean, just go down the list. Every single civic role of note in this community had been held by the same person for 10, 15, 20 years. And that's great continuity while it lasts, but it ends at some point. And I certainly could imagine with all of those people coming to those milestones and reaching their 60s, that was going to be there's going to be a major leadership transition in the community in the 4 or 8 years or beyond that I was going to be mayor. And so now I knew coming in, not because we needed to turn everything upside down because of the job that my predecessor did, but because just change was naturally about to occur at a more rapid pace than maybe we were used to in Oklahoma City. And there was nothing you could do about it other than to harness it in a way that was most productive, most unified. I mean, that was a big reason why I'm wearing this little pin on my lapel that denotes my brand of One OKC. Well, the reason I really hammered that so hard was for all these reasons, because everything I just described would be justification for us to be divided. Let's divide ourselves between Republicans and Democrats, or minority groups, or new people and old people, and all of that. And obviously that's not a successful formula for a city. So with all of that transition in mind, I also knew that we had to double down on unity and finding common purpose, which our city had been so effective at doing for so long. And I think, even despite some enormous external challenges that I certainly didn't know were coming, we've largely been able to sustain that unity.
Well, what do you think, looking at it today, what do you think is your biggest challenge that's upcoming on the short term and the long term?
Well, we've got, when you're a mayor, I mean, it's how much time is this segment, because I mean, there's so many things that, you gotta be thinking about and working on. And fortunately, I'm not all in this alone. I mean, we got a great city council and a city manager and a whole host of partners in this endeavor. But, and a lot of this is going to be on my mind in the weeks ahead because I'm preparing my State of the City for this summer. It's pandemic has caused a repeated shift in the schedule of the State of the City. And that's an exercise that mayors go through that really helps us focus on what's next. And having just gone through an election, I'm even more focused on sort of what does the next 4 to 8 years look like, not just the next 6 months or 12 months. And I look at, I still think that we as a community need to have a big conversation about public education. Now, in the near term, the Oklahoma City Public School District is going to go out for a pretty consequential bond issue later this year, and that's going to be a big part of that conversation. And in the near term, we're going to have also the issue of the county jail, which is not the city's issue, but I recognize that not everybody is able to separate those things. And I know that not only is it important for our community at large, but also it's something that you got to get past. I mean, if I want to talk about other topics that may seem a little more superficial than the serious issue of the county jail, I recognize that people are going to throw back at me, well, what about the jail? I don't want to talk about X, Y, and Z. I want to talk about the jail. And so I know how important that is to the community that pass on June 28th, and I'm a strong supporter of its passage. So those are near-term challenges that are maybe external to City Hall, but are pretty important to the community. More directly to City Hall, I mean, we're going to have a conversation that Mayor Cornett got started, but about regional transit in the next 2 or 3 years. We now have a regional transit authority that includes Edmond, Norman, Moore, Del City, and Oklahoma City, and they're going to be putting forward a proposal to the voters of those 5 communities for regional transit, which is really commuter rail. The dream of commuter rail from Edmond and Norman, that's going to get put in front of the people of those 5 communities sometime in the next few years. That's a big conversation. I think we're a big city, and we're going to start having some big city type decisions to make, like when it comes to sports facilities, when it comes to more serious issues like homelessness. I can kind of just go down the list of stuff that we have largely been able to get by with investment levels that were far below maybe cities of our size, and I think that good luck is coming to an end, and we're going to have to make some big decisions to spend money, in the next few years.
Let me jump in and get us to a break.
I could go on the whole show, but thank you.
You're going to have 9 minutes when we get back. Mayor David Holt on The Verdict.
One of the best kept secrets about the post 9/11 GI Bill benefit is that it can be used at a trade school or a technical school, and it doesn't have to be used at a university or college. These are benefits that the veterans have earned through their service, and they should take advantage of it.
Veterans really need to understand that there are many resources offered by the Oklahoma Department of Veteran Affairs. They are there to help you find the right school for you, the school that will help you and your family make great steps into your future.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Our guest is Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt.
David, you were kind enough to cover some of the short-term concerns you see coming around the corner pretty quickly, if they're not already here. Looking into the future, what are some of the concerns that you see popping up maybe 5-10 years from now that we really haven't had to address up to now?
Well, interesting question. I don't know if there are things other than maybe what I just talked about, regional transit, that are issues that we haven't addressed before.
Yeah.
But, from the previous segment, I didn't even get to 2 of the most important core services we provide that are certainly topics of ongoing discussion that we'll be dealing with next year, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. And that's, roads and bridges, street repairs in our city. So I'm sure I've said this here before, and I say it in every forum I can. We are 620 square miles. We're the size of Chicago, Boston, Washington, Manhattan, Miami, and Philadelphia combined. and it provides an enormous and unique challenge to our infrastructure. And so that manifests itself in many different ways, but the one that seems to be top of mind for most people is the way that it creates a formula where we just cannot keep up with street repairs and street resurfacing, you know. And so I think we have to continue to figure out. In his closing months as mayor, he and the council led the initiative for Better Streets, Safer City, which creatively for a couple years added sales tax to the revenue pie that we've been utilizing for street repairs. But that ran its course, and you know, we need to continue to try to figure out creative ways to get more revenue into that purpose. Also, shifting gears, but to another major core service is police. That same day, the voters of Oklahoma City approved funding for 120 new police officers, but we still haven't been able to fill those positions. So it's that was not the challenge of the challenging aspect of that issue that we thought we would get hung up on. You know, it was the funding. How are we going to pay for this? Well, we got the voters of Oklahoma City to approve the first permanent increase in the sales tax in 40 years, and so we have the money. But we've really struggled in the last 4 years to fill the positions, to get enough applicants, you know, and so
and they retire.
Yeah, and you always have people retiring on top of it. So
yeah,
you know,
it's a problem.
Why is that? Why do you think that is the case?
Yeah, you know, I mean, we're obviously a police department that has a high standard. You know, so I mean, we have enough people literally apply to fill all the jobs, but whether we can accept all of them is a totally different question. And so a lot of people get cut out of the process through the application process. You know, we're competitive in salary with regional large cities, but we actually get a surprising level of salary competition with smaller cities, like some of our suburbs and stuff. Like, I mean, like our salaries may be competitive with you know, a large city 5 hours from here, but we're, you know, having trouble necessarily competing on salaries with small cities 20 miles away, you know, and so we gotta work on that. So that's back to being a funding issue. So we're working on all those things. I'd say, you know, on the flip side of it though, you know, I'm so excited at the opportunities that we get. There's lots of challenges that come with being the 22nd largest city in the United States and adding 100,000 people in 10 years. But there's also a lot of doors that are being opened for us, and that's the fun part of it.
Let me ask another question. What is your view about the need for reinstatement of the Human Rights Commission?
Okay. Yeah, so that was disbanded in Oklahoma City in the mid-90s. So even before this old guy was on the council. Might have covered it, I don't know, at KOC.
I did, yeah.
So it's been gone a while. But interestingly, you know, Tulsa has had one all that time. Lawton has had one all that time. You know, most large American cities have a Human Rights Commission. And so it would come up from time to time through the years, you know, a desire to see it. But it was the summer of 2020 that kind of made it a front burner issue again, as you know, understandably, a lot of communities within our city felt that that was something that we lacked, and that was a way to respond to this desire for racial equity and equal opportunity in our community. So, you know, we did exactly what we always do at Oklahoma City. If we want to get something done or have a serious conversation, we created a task force. And so we had a Human Rights Commission task force. It worked for almost 2 years. Certainly did a methodical job. We had 4 council members on the task force, and that ultimately came forward with a proposal to reinstate the Human Rights Commission and kind of a little bit of what that might look like. And as we sit here, that is still before the council for its consideration, with the final vote expected in July. And we shall see how that goes. Obviously, I think it's the right thing to do. It doesn't, you know, it has, you know, no more powers than the one does in Tulsa and the one does in Lawton, and it's certainly powers that are set forth under state law. But I think it's meaningful to a lot of people in our community. And again, if it can work just fine without controversy in cities like Tulsa and Lawton, I think it can do just the same here in Oklahoma City.
We've been reading a lot about the millions and millions of federal dollars that are coming to local governments since COVID started, and it's for a variety of different uses. That just seems like an avalanche of dollars that had not been coming in before. So at some point, is that Are they going to turn off the faucet and the federal dollars will stop? Has that already happened?
I think we're there.
And what have you done to try and systematically figure out how we're going to adequately and efficiently spend the dollars that may not come by ever again? I mean, this type of funding for local government is kind of unprecedented.
It is. I mean, as you well know, but maybe your viewers don't, you were president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, so you were at the tip of the spear advocating for just the kind of things that finally happened. And there's really three major packages worth noting in this regards. There's the CARES Act that happened shortly after the commencement of the pandemic, and cities over 500,000 got major direct allocations, and we were, of course, one of those cities, and we got about $120 million. And then there was ARPA, American Rescue Plan, a year later, and again, we got about $120 million. And then there's finally the bipartisan infrastructure bill. That's a little different. I mention it, but it is a little different. There's no blank check for Oklahoma City. That'd be nice, but that's not the way it's structured. It's more about beefing up a lot of existing grant programs. So I expect us to ultimately get money from that and more money for infrastructure than we've ever gotten from the federal government before. But it is not in the same form of a block grant like you saw with the CARES Act and ARPA. So sometimes people say, well, how are you going to spend your infrastructure money? And it's like, well, it's not exactly work that way. We're going to be in competitive grant processes with very narrow parameters for each type of project. Here's a grant for transit, here's a grant for roads and bridges, so on. With the CARES Act, to kind of answer the second part of your question, how are we spending this stuff? The CARES Act, we largely got that out the door. A lot of that went to small business support. So if you can recall, back in those spring and summer days of 2020, we were writing, $5, $10, $100,000 checks to small businesses in Oklahoma City. They had PPP to turn to, but certainly the small business continuity program, as we called it here in Oklahoma City, was a huge contributor to our economic survival. And, I remember you and I talking at that time and kind of believing that we were going to enter this time period where there'd be lots of empty storefronts in Oklahoma City and a lot of unemployed people, and this was going to be kind of a dark era that would probably last for years, and it lasted about 2 months. Thank you to PPP and thank you to Small Business Continuity Program. But anyways, so that CARES Act money was largely spent. And now we have the ARPA dollars. We actually only have half of them yet. You get half, then you get another half next year. The main point for that, from the federal government's perspective, was to help with our revenue shortfalls. Now, I can't go back in time and pay a police officer in the summer of 2020. So some of our operational shortfalls are just what they are. They're gone forever. But definitely some of our of our revenues that were geared towards capital projects, we might be able to backfill. I don't think, if people are looking for transformational change from the ARPA dollars of $120 million, I'll put it in a little bit of perspective because it sounds like a lot of money, and I hate to minimize it, but we're about to approve a annual city budget that is well in excess of $1 billion, right? So $120 million is not even 10% of our annual budget. And you're going to see other cities brag about these remarkable things they're doing. The allocations were not strictly based on population. Syracuse got more money than Oklahoma City. Toledo got more money than Oklahoma City. They may have the opportunity to do transformational projects because the kind of money that some of these other smaller cities got, because the allocations were also based on poverty levels and other things, would be the equivalent of us getting $700 million.
Yeah.
And if we got $700 million, okay, now we are talking. I could do something really important with that.
About 20 seconds left.
Okay, well, anyway, so great process, though. This is a great testament to the professionalism of Oklahoma City. The city manager and his team have done a great job walking us through this process over the last 2 years. And that's the good news, that it's not all up to what David Holt thinks we should do with this money. It's a great, inclusive, and thoughtful process that expends this money, and it's being done in a good way.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. We could go on for hours.
We could.
Well, we may. Hang around.
Kent and I'll be back with a final word. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
We're back on The Verdict. Mayor Holt was a great guest, just as we suspected he would be.
Yeah, we knew he would be great. He always is.
A lot to think about.
And
you can tell he spends a lot of time thinking about it.
And he's so kind to give us the time that he does give, because I know how busy he is, how many people pulling at him, and we appreciate him coming on and giving these good ideas to our viewers.
We got some website information, more information on the things that Mayor Holt talked about at the city's website, okc.gov. That's okc.gov. And we have a website. We'd love for you to log on and talk about a guest that you'd like to see come or a subject matter you'd like to see us cover. Our website is theverdict.tv. That's theverdict.tv. But that's going to do it for now. Again, thanks to Mayor Holt for making time out of his day to come be a guest on our show. And we will be back next week with another edition of The Verdict. We'll see you then.